Good day, folks. Welcome to On the Bench at Sport Fishing on the Fly. Today I'm going to tie for you the Klinkhammer. The Klinkhammer is a fly that was developed by Hans von Klinken, I think in 1986. It's used as an emerging insect, originally designed as a caddis, but you can use it as a mayfly or any emerging insect. Fantastic pattern. Also works great as a top fly for a dropper. Make sure you have these materials ready before you tie the fly. For a hook, I'm using an 1167 Daiichi size 12 Klinkhammer hook. I believe Partridge also makes a Klinkhammer hook, and there's other, Arex makes an emerger hook that looks really good too. For the post, I'm using Semperfli Polyyarn in cream color. You could use any color post, or also CDC is a really good material to use for this. If you want something brighter, use pink. I've done them in pink and orange and all kinds of colors. For the trailing shuck, I'm using Arizona Semi-Seal in Starlight. You could use Antron as well, or you don't have to have a trailing shuck on it. The original wasn't done with one, I believe. For the body, I'm using Semperfli, and I'm using the Kapok dubbing in Adam's color. It's a dry fly dubbing. For the thorax, I'm using Peacock Curl. Mine just happens to be black. Green is fine. Or you could use dubbing, or you could use straggle as well, I've seen used. For the hackle, I'm using Cree. Any hackle's fine. Like Hans does these flies in all different colors. I'm trying to stay as close to the original as I can, so it's kind of a cream color. For thread, I'm using Semperfli just in white, the Nano Silk 12/0 and 18/0. It's good to have the Nano Silk for this fly. You don't need 18/0, 12/0's fine to use for the whole fly. I'm going to be coloring the thread at some point. The first one that I used, the 12/0 with a black felt, or you could use black thread, that's fine. I'm just going to put my hook in the vise. So the reason it's designed this way, you can tell by how the hook sits. So the insect, the bottom part of the insect and the shuck is sitting in the water, and this is sitting in the surface film, the top part, which floats. Awesome design. So I'm just going to take my 12/0 thread, because I'm using Nano Silk. I'm going to wax it. It's a GSP, it's very slippery. Helps to start your thread on the hook. I recommend wax for tying this fly if you're using Nano Silk. I'm going to take my thread all the way down. Hans goes quite low on the fly. Oh, just about lost my scissors. And then bring my thread right back up. And I'm going to go about the midway point here. Well, I know silk attached to my finger. About the midway point on this flat spot here. Because the hackle's going to come forward and it's going to come back, and you don't want it too far forward of the eye. Now I'm going to take my poly yarn, and as it comes off the cardboard, it sort of has like a fold in it. So I find about 3 of these lengths is about perfect for this size hook. You want to use enough, because this is part of what makes the fly float, as well as the hackle, right? Hans says to apply floatant to the poly yarn. And the dubbing, I'm going to use the dry fly dubbing is recommended. Any dry fly dubbing will help. So I'm just snipping it so that I'm putting it all together in one length. And I'm going to apply more wax here. And just hold it right on top and then pull it tight as I pull towards me. And then wrap backwards. A few wraps. And I'm going to take my scissors, pull this out and cut it at a 45-degree angle. And I found applying wax at this point helpful as well, because the poly yarn is very slippery as well as the nano silk. Just cover that up, and this helps build a nice taper into your fly. I really like fishing emergers. I fish a lot of emergers, soft hackles. Hans has fished this fly all over the world for all kinds of fish. It's especially effective for trout and grayling, what it was designed for, but he's also fished it for like Atlantic salmon and stuff, and like all over places he goes. Now I'm gonna take just a little bit of the, I was gonna say antron, the dubbing. And that's even too much. You don't want much of a shuck, just a tiny, tiny amount. You could use crystal flash for this, is also good. A couple pieces of crystal flash. Antron. And I've seen them done in tan as well, like a tan colored shuck. I'm sort of trying to imitate like a mayfly emerger. Sort of like an Adam's color. I'm going to be tying these for the Skagit River coming up as well, and also the Kootenays for the drake hatches that we get. I'm going to come back up here, and I've gone ahead and selected a Cree feather here. I'm going to pull off the fluffy bits at the bottom, and I don't use a hackle gauge. Hans likes it to have like fairly big hackle. I mean, it helps it float better the bigger it is. Gives it a nice silhouette as well. I just sort of measure it compared to my hook gape. This is a bit longer than the hook gape, so I'm just going to pull a few more off. I want it a bit longer, but not quite that long. That should be about right. Maybe a little bit more. And I'm just going to lay the feather on top of the poly yarn. I like to leave just a tiny bit of the bare stem here on top of the poly yarn so that it's easier to turn the hackle, and you want the shiny side of the feather up so the dull side of the feather is facing the poly yarn. I'm just going to tie that stem down nice and tight. This is what nano silk is good for tying the poly yarn, for tying the feather in so it doesn't slip. Very slim, and you don't need too many wraps. There's a train going off in my background. Bring it back down to the bottom. Now I'm going to take the kapok dubbing, and this dubbing was designed to float. It was originally designed for life jackets. I've done my own tests with it in a cup, like with my Klinkhammers and my dry flies and stuff, and a couple of, like, some of them have floated for days. I couldn't believe it, and I never put any floatant on them. This dubbing's really easy to apply to your thread, like a very, very slim noodle here. I'm just pulling it as I wrap it. And I'm also twisting it at the same time, but not too much. I want it to be flattish. I don't want it to be round too much. A little bit. Take a little bit more here. Just build a nice taper. Now I'm going to bring my thread right in front and build a little dam right in front. That will stand that up. And now I'm going to take my thread, pull it out, bring it in behind here, wrap it around the post a few times. Bring it in front. At this point, I'm going to color it. I'm going to take my peacock herl, and like I said, you could use dubbing or straggle poly yarn, dry fly poly yarn I've used by Semperfli. The original was done with peacock herl. I'm just going to take the ends and snip them off. They're more brittle. Apply a little bit of wax to my thread here. And then just bring them in behind here. Couple of turns, and then bring my thread back to the front. Now I'm going to take my peacock herl. I'm just going to give it a little twist. Take about 3 wraps in behind. And a few wraps in front. Build a nice fluffy thorax. Tie that off. I like you to take a couple in behind, a couple in front, one in behind. Snip that off. Make sure my thread is still black. And now I'm going to whip finish. Pull that good and tight. So I've gone ahead and turned my hook in the vise sideways here so that my post is parallel. And I'm taking my 18-aught nano silk, but you could use 12-aught for this totally. It's thin enough and strong. I just have 18-aught, so I'm going to use it. I've waxed it, and I'm just going to tie it in at the base of the post. Snip that off. Just going to pull some thread out. I'm just going to make a few wraps here and build a little base here for my hackle. There we go. Now I'm going to take the hackle. I'm just bending it backwards so that the dull side is facing this way up. Just bending it with my nail. Just going to adjust my hook here. It slipped a little bit. didn't have my vise tight. There we go. You could use, seems I've got some of the poly yarn trapped in the hackle. There, one sec. A glass of water here. Just gonna wet it. Seems to help. There we go. Just start turning it around the post. It's long enough, this hackle, I don't need hackle pliers. That last one brought too many, I thought, below the thorax. So Hans says to do as many turns until it starts to twist funny, which is about now. I'm going to be trimming them anyway. That's good. Tie that off good. Just going to snip the stem out. Now I like to bring my hackle and just pull it up. And then turn below it as much as possible. And now whip finish. I have one of these large whip finishers, which is really great for this type of fly. Just trying to wiggle it through here. Pull that good and tight. And now the post, I'm going to take and I'm just going to bend it back. And you want to measure it about the length of the body. It's always good to have a pair of scissors at the river or at the lake. And this fly is good for both. So you can always trim it shorter if you need to, but you can't make it longer. So it's good to have a nice long post on there. Like I said, it can be any color too. Pink, orange, I've done them in, green. I've got ahead and put my hook back the right way in the vise there. And I'm just going to take and trim any hackle off below the thorax here. Otherwise it'll sit funny in the water. I don't have the best eyesight here, so I'm trying my best. That looks about right. And then you just want to take a little drop of resin or glue. I've just got some resin handy here. And just put it at the base of the post here. Just going to do both sides. Put a little drop on each side. And then take that and cure it. Something in my... a little piece of shiny stuff in my kapok dubbing there I didn't see. I'm trying to pull it out. It showed up like nothing when I put the light on it. It's really fluorescent. Huh. I always have random little pieces of stuff stuck to the bottom of my vise, and that's probably how that happened. There we go. There you have it, the Klinkhammer. Thank you for joining me on this edition of On the Bench at Sport Fishing on the Fly. Take care, everyone. Tight lines.